Bonjour, bonjour, I'm Angel from FrenchLover.org, and today we are going to speak about language learning methods. So, I know I'm probably not going to get any friends through this video because the title is the best language learning method, and well, if you ask every expert, they will tell you that their method is the best, obviously. But what matters to you as a student is really to choose a method which works for you. And in order to choose a method which works for you, you kind of need to understand a little bit how language learning methods work in general. So you can pretty much represent them on a spectrum which would look like this. So that would be a spectrum which would go from the most technical to the most natural or back. And so technical would be pretty much the classroom approach. Like you go to school, you perceive the language to be an object of study, you study each language fact independently, and then you use a variety of tools such as exercises to try and learn the language. There are a number of different technical methods which exist, so I'm not going to tell you about all of them, but like for example, translating would be a technical tool that you can use. And most classrooms would use a very technical approach. And then on the other hand of the spectrum, you have the natural approach. The natural approach at its core, like the most natural way to learn a language, is what a baby would do. So basically, the babies, they're not even trying to learn the language, they just kind of hear adults and like older people speak the language and they just scoop it up somehow. Nowadays, most groundbreaking language learning methods strive to come closer to this end of the spectrum, the natural. And many methods who are actually pretty technical also pretend to be natural because it's kind of like a big sales argument that you learn languages naturally. Now, is it a good thing to learn languages naturally, or is it a better thing to learn languages technically? For a long time, experts thought that basically the most technical it gets, the better. Nowadays, people seem to think, or at least say, that it's better to learn languages naturally, so what's better? Both have upsides and downsides. In the case of the technical methods, it's typically very comfortable to learn with those methods. We go to school, we sit down, we listen, we try to repeat. It's something we're very used to. So that's the upside. The downside is that as long as you think of the language as something which is in a classroom and which someday you will speak later, well, someday you will speak later. Or maybe not, but at least it's not today. So it considerably delays the speaking part, and sometimes it just never happens because you never feel ready, and this is just not the way to learn to speak in a natural environment. On the other hand of the spectrum, you have every natural approach. So for sure, as I told you, since babies do it and babies eventually end up speaking, that works somewhat. The only thing is that when you think of it, when you learned your mother language when you were young, you were at it full time from age 0 to age, say, 8 or 10. So that's like 8 or 10 years of full-time language learning. I mean, you were not really trying because you were a baby, but that's really what you did. So if you're going for 8 or 10 years of full-time immersion, I'm sure that works. The problem is, do you really have 8 or 10 years available to learn the language the hard way? To just be dived in a language and just kind of try to scoop it up somehow. Some people do it and it works. For most people, it's not exactly a sustainable approach. So in my opinion, the best approach would be somewhere in the middle. Your biggest goal should be to speak. Or at least if your goal is to be able to speak a language, your biggest activity or your main goal should be to speak. And any other things that you do should only aim to support the speaking. That's actually where the technical part comes in. You're an adult, and you're very blessed to be an adult, and you already speak at least one language, which is awesome. That's at least easier, because you can use things that you already know from the language that you speak or from other languages that you've learned in order to learn the language faster. So I would not recommend to try and go full natural while you actually can use tools which are useful. Now, which tools work for you is pretty much different for everyone, but for some people, for example, a vocabulary notebook or a flashcard app, which is eminently technical, would totally help. Like, it would totally shortcut your way towards actually knowing the language. If you're going to use a method which is designed by someone else, please keep in mind that some methods pretend to be very, very natural, but actually contain a lot of technical aspects. That's the case, for example, for the Assimil method, which I used successfully when I was younger. I actually learned Portuguese very successfully with this method, so I can say that at least for some people and some languages, it does work. The communication of the Assimil method is pretty much, it's all natural, you learn it little by little, like when you were a small child. That's how at least they say that they do it. But to be entirely honest, when you look at it from the perspective of how it works, there is a lot of translation. There is also every Sunday or every 7th day in the week, there are grammatical notes. So it's not entirely natural. My point is, I think a good method should really mix natural aspects and technical aspects. However, the fact that a method communicates around being natural does not mean that they don't also have technical aspects. So if you see a method, it says all natural, just be careful. It might be all natural or it might not be. I would tend to think that just the very fact that it is a method at all makes it kind of technical. You could also not use a method and decide to learn in a complete natural way through audio only, or an approach of just watching movies or just listening to natives or speaking to natives, and that could work. But I would recommend that you don't completely cut off the possibility of using tools such as vocabulary learning tools or a little bit of grammar here and there if you need it, because it can help. So that's it. That was a quick summary of how different language learning methods work, and I'm sure you have a lot of ideas about it, so please don't hesitate to comment below. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer you, and if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe for more. À très vite.